You're never prepared for the call. Folks figure they will be, someday, after enough years and bad news. Maybe I believed that myself back when I had more color in my hair. But some news knocks the wind right out of you, no matter how old you get. It was just after dinner on a sticky July Tuesday when the phone rang and my world, what there was left of it, began to fray at the seams. "Mr. Halston?" The voice was young and tight, not someone I knew. "This is Officer Braddock from County Sheriff's. I'm calling about your brother, Mike. Mike, my baby brother, though by 50, nobody calls you baby anything anymore. He'd gone missing once before, as a kid, for a couple hours behind the old grain mill. This time, I guessed it wasn't so harmless." My hand squeezed the receiver until my knuckles turned white. "What's he done now?" That's what I managed. The bravado lasted just long enough for Braddock to say, "He's missing, sir. His truck's out by Dunham's Grove. Doors wide open, not a soul in sight. Hasn't been to work, not home, not anywhere folks can find." That's when the world curled up tight around me, and I remembered Dad's warning, a bad gut feeling handed down like an heirloom. "Halston's vanished two ways, son. Fast or for good." Then I heard Mom's voice, thin with worry, drifting from a memory. "Don't go looking for trouble past sundown. Nothing out there after dark, but what you bring with you." What the hell had Mike been looking for? I didn't tell Braddock any of that. I just thanked him, hung up, and sat heavy at the kitchen table, staring at a spot on the linoleum. I'd always envied folks with neat lives, trouble tucked away in drawered boxes. My family's trouble was spilled out, stubborn, and refused to be swept up for long. By 8, I was driving east, windows down, the night gathering itself thick as soup. Fireflies flickered through the fields, and the road turned to dirt near Dunham's Grove, a kind of place that still makes grown men uneasy, though they won't admit it at the bar. Mike's red Ford sat half off the path, cab light glowing like a lure. As soon as I stepped out, the night pressed down and everything went still. That's the thing that sticks in your head after the fact, the quiet, heavy as wool, not even a whip poor will daring to break it. The cab smelled of sweat, cologne, and something I didn't like, electricity, sharp and metallic, as if a storm just passed through. Mike's cell was on the dash, screen smeared with fingerprints. On the ground, his work boots just sitting there, paired up like he'd stepped out of them to wade into the creek. But there was no creek nearby, just woods, thick and dark, and the sweet rot of summer all around. I pointed my flashlight into the trees. The beam caught nothing but tangled roots and old beer cans. I called his name loud at first, but quieter as the forest swallowed the sound. Part of me hoped he'd stumble out, laughing, maybe drunk. Part of me remembered Uncle Ray, who went to check a busted fence in '92 and didn't come back. I told myself I didn't believe in curses, but walking into those woods, I felt something ancient watching. The ground felt soft, like it might give way. By midnight, the search party had assembled. A few neighbors, some deputies, and me. Everyone knew how these things went. Flashlights swung side to side, calling Mike's name like it was a kind of prayer. Nobody said it, but you could tell. Nobody expected good news. I stayed after they left, sitting on Mike's hood, staring at the moon-dappled branches. Truth is, I was waiting for something to happen, some sign, a rustle, a voice. Instead, there was that thick, woolen hush and the odd certainty this was just the beginning. Not just for Mike, but for me. That night, I dreamed of the woods vast and dark, endless trails swallowing up not just my brother, but all the regrets I swept aside over 50-odd years. I heard voices calling from far below the roots, voices that sounded first like strangers, then like people I'd lost, then just like me. I woke before dawn, sweating, heart pounding. I realized I wasn't just looking for Mike. I was looking for an answer to a question that had haunted my family for as long as I could remember. What happens to the missing after the world stops looking? Day broke with the rude insistence of a neighbor's pickup rumbling by. Sunlight clawed through the windshield, waking me slow and sore from the hood of Mike's truck. The dew had made my jeans damp, and my back ached. I stood, stretched, then looked once more at the boots lined up on the ground where I'd last seen them, as if waiting for feet that had changed their mind about walking out. The police tape flapped half-heartedly in the morning breeze. I spotted Deputy Braddock, all business, and not a morning person, judging by his pinched expression. He had the look of a man who'd rather be anywhere else, but some sense of duty or maybe guilt kept him rooted. He came over, nodding in greeting. "Nothing yet," he said, voice low, eyes darting to where the woods thickened. "Dogs'll be out by 10. I'd say you head home, Mr. Halston, but I reckon you won't." I smiled, thin and tired. "You'd lose that bet." Braddock grunted in understanding and gave me space. I walked the perimeter of the search area, squinting at every stick and shadow, half-dash expecting dash, half-dash dreading some clue just out of sight. The longer I looked, the more I realized the ground itself felt wrong, like memory gone fuzzy at the edges. Birdsong never started, as if the woods were holding their breath. Around mid-morning, Sarah Cook showed up with a plate of sweet rolls and coffee thermos, like she did for every crisis in this town. Her husband, Earl, trailed behind. "Heard anything?" she asked, not meeting my eye, hands trembling. "Not a peep." "Thanks for coming out, Sarah." I meant it. In small towns, the ritual of showing up is sometimes all we have for comfort. Earl, gruff and quiet, cleared his throat. "My uncle vanished out here in '85. Folks said he'd run off, but Grandma always claimed she heard him calling nights after." Sarah shushed him, but I looked at Earl, seeing something familiar in his gaze loss that never went away, just became part of the landscape. "If I hear anything, you'll know first," he said, voice steady. I nodded, grateful for allies, however battered. By afternoon, the search had combed the first acre. Dogs sniffed fruitless trails. Radios crackled. Volunteers faded. Nobody voiced what we were all thinking. A grown man doesn't just disappear, leave his truck and work boots behind. Not unless he's running from something or toward something else. I took a break under an old sycamore, let my mind drift. Remembrance has a way of sharpening grief, so I hugged my arms around my chest, shut my eyes. Faces flickered in my mind. Mike as a kid, chasing bottle rockets we couldn't afford, scrambling up haylofts, grinning with a chipped tooth and a wild light in his eyes. These woods were our second home hiding place, battleground, territory for every boyhood adventure and fear. Always felt something lived out here, just beyond what you could see. Grandpa called it the old shadow, not a monster, just a sense that the woods watched us, measured us. Suddenly, static from my phone jolted me back. Weak reception, but a voicemail indicator blinked. My heart spiked. The message was less than 5 seconds, full of static and muffled noise. But in the white noise, a voice emerged for a split second low, urgent. "Don't follow?" The rest cut off, swallowed by an electric whine. I played it again, pressing the phone to my ear until my temple hurt. "Don't follow." Was it Mike? The cadence was right. The desperation, too. I showed it to Braddock. He played it twice, then 3 times, then just shook his head. Sighed, "There's spots here where cell towers get weird." He didn't look convinced. Neither was I. That night, I couldn't sleep in my bed. I turned on the porch light and listened for owls, for anything. I kept hearing that voice, "Don't follow." A warning? A plea? I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and sat with the darkness until the bottle was empty. Dreams found me again dense, entangling. I was running barefoot through trees, roots clutching at my ankles. Voices called from every direction, some gentle, some angry. Then I'd see Mike just beyond a wall of thorns, face half in shadow, eyes wide, mouthing words I couldn't hear. The next morning, I drove back to the grove before sunrise. Each time I promised myself I'd find something the others missed. The search party had dwindled. Folks get uneasy the longer someone's gone. They get superstitious. I ignored the police lines and walked deeper into the woods, keeping a straight course, fighting panic whenever the tree trunks seemed to shift. I thought about Mike, haunted by old debts, money, love, maybe just the need to disappear. Then I saw it, a jacket snagged on a limb, half buried in leaves. Mike's favorite denim, torn at the shoulder, badge from last fall's county fair, still pinned to the pocket. No blood, no prints, just the jacket placed, not dropped. Kneeling, I felt a sudden chill, though the air was still and heavy. It wasn't normal cold. It clung inside, icy and deep, like a hand pressed to my heart. My phone buzzed again, unknown number. I answered, breathless, but only that same electric whine, louder now, filling my head. Something on the other end breathing, just out of reach. I stood, jacket under my arm, and stared out into the shadows, knowing, truly knowing, this was no ordinary disappearance. Something old and patient had marked these woods, and it was waiting. I took the jacket home, still damp from the woods, draped it over a kitchen chair. The denim scent earthy, tinged with sweat and cologne, brought back Mike beside me in the old field, daring me to steal peaches from Mrs. Lawson's orchard, or later, trading stories on the back porch, kicking up dust with the best of them. I ached for those ordinary days. I sat for hours, turning over memories in my hands like loose change. Tried to see what I'd missed, some clue in his voice, or face regret, fear, a goodbye tucked between laughs. I kept circling back to his last visit, the way he'd lingered at the door, hugging a second longer, eyes darting toward the woods. He'd said, "Stay out at Dunham's. Sam, you know what Dad always told us." I'd laughed it off, but he hadn't smiled back. I decided to call his phone, watching the battery icon drop to red as I left a message. "Mike, it's me. I found your jacket. If you're out there, just come home. I'll understand. No questions." My words sounded feeble once I said them out loud. I set the phone on the table, waiting for a reply that never came. It got me thinking about the old stories, legends that locals swapped over coffee or a pint. Those funny things in the grove. Some claimed they'd seen lights bobbing through the trees, heard laughter just out of sight. My father, the most practical man I've ever known, used to say, "Never chase the voices, boys." That's how folks get lost. When I was a teen, I chalked it up to backwoods superstition. Now, each old yarn sounded less like nonsense and more like a warning. Unable to sleep, I rifled through Mike's things, searching for any scrap that might help a clue in his handwriting, a forgotten bill, scribbled names. What I found instead was a faded photograph. Mike in high school, shirt half untucked, arms around a girl whose face was half turned, hair gleaming gold in the sun. No name, no date. I flipped it over. In Mike's blocky print, "Some folks stay lost, Sam." The words left a pit in my stomach. Had he meant himself? The girl? All the souls gone missing from our town's history, dozens over decades? A cruel parade? The next morning found me pacing the lawn as garbage trucks rattled past, neighbors peeking from behind curtains. News spreads fast when life's this quiet. First, Officer Braddock called to say the search was being suspended. Until something new turns up. "Mr. Halston, we're sorry." I could hear the truth in his tone. Folks move on, but the missing don't let go. With nothing left to lose, I did what I should have done first. I called the only woman I ever trusted to tell the truth, whether it stung or soothed. "Hey, Lou," I said when she picked up, voice clipped as always. "You hear about Mike?" She was silent for a beat. "Sam, of course I did. Saw Earl Cook's daughter at the pharmacy. Come in for coffee, now. I drove across town, the sun burning holes through the mist. Lou's house looked the same, as always, sunflowers in the yard, porch swing creaking in the breeze. She hugged me, fierce and fast, and poured coffee without asking how I took it. We sat at her kitchen table, clinking mugs, steam curling skyward. I know you, Sam, Lou said at last, voice soft. You're not going to let this go. What would you do? I asked. She looked out the window toward her own stand of pines. Sometimes the woods take what's owed, Sam, but sometimes they give something back, if you know how to look. I thought that was nonsense, but I'd run out of better ideas. Where would you look? She leaned in close. Old McBride's land, East Ridge. That place always gave me the creeps. Folks heard things out there last spring. I thanked her and left, her blessing earning in my ears. By dusk, I was back at the grove. I walked alone toward the ridge, heart hammering so loud it drowned out the insects. Every twig's snap made me jump. Every shadow seemed to breathe. And then deep in the trees, a flicker of light. Pale, cold, not fire nor flashlight, weaving between trunks just out of reach. I followed, careful, hopeful, fearful, stupid. The ground gave beneath my feet, and I tumbled, scraped arms flailing for purchase. At the pit's edge deep, as a grave, old and sunken something glinted, I reached down, heart in my throat, and pulled out a set of keys. Mike's. His battered keychain half the state of Texas, a joke from a college trip, felt cool and real. Next to it, a scrap of faded denim. But more than relief, some primal alarm rang in my chest. The woods closed in. I turned back, stumbling for home as shadows stretched and voices, faint and heartbreaking, began to whisper my name. Back home, I tossed the keys on the table, heart racing. I poured myself another shot, though it barely cut the chill that clung to me. For the first time since Mike went missing, I felt close, like I was brushing up against secrets I'd never wanted to meet. The woods had given up something, but what did it mean? Did Mike leave these keys behind, or had someone marked the spot just for me? I called Lou again, voice shaking. Found his keys in a pit, East Ridge. You ever hear about that? She paused long. Pit's been there since before McBride went mad. Kids dared each other to jump across it, but grown folks stayed away. Too many stories, dogs gone missing, bad dreams for weeks. She sighed. Sam, don't let this place get you, too. Her words echoed all night as I lay in bed, the keys heavy in my pocket instead of the kitchen table. Sleep kept its distance. I listened for movement, convinced shadows were prowling outside. At 3, my phone flashed a new text, but just static lines of gibberish that made less sense with each reread. Morning was no easier. Every neighbor who called or stopped by wore the same look, sympathy and superstition. Sarah Cook arrived with a casserole and a thinly veiled attempt at comfort. My cousin in Kentucky says dogs can see what men can't. Sam, maybe bring one out there. I thanked her, forcing a smile. Before noon, curiosity won. I loaded up my old hound, Duke his nose sharp, stride slow now, and drove back to the ridge. The woods felt closer, heavier. At the pit's lip, Duke whimpered, pacing in nervous circles, tail tucked. Dogs don't lie. I knelt, running my hand over moss and loose earth. Nothing new, just the unmistakable print of a boot, pressed deep. Duke barked, short and sharp. I peered over the edge. The pit was deeper than I remembered, but empty. As I started to leave, Duke froze. Hackles up. I heard breathing, close but invisible. My own breath held frigid panic. I called, Mike, soft, hopeful, desperate. For a moment, I swore I heard my brother's voice, barely audible, a single word. Wait. Duke growled. Something moved in the brush, a quick rustle, then silence. We retreated, but my blood raced. I couldn't shake the message. Someone, or something, wanted me to wait. Or was it a warning? The difference felt thinner than the air between midnight and dawn. Back in town, Lou called, voice urgent. "Dreamed of you last night, Sam. You were standing at the pit, arms out. Voices like a choir. Woke up cold." She shivered audibly. "You need to talk to the oldest folks, those who remember when things were different." She gave me 2 names, Mrs. Eller, 93, sharp as a nail, and Reverend Mills, who'd preached funerals for half the folks I'd ever known. I drove to Mrs. Eller's bungalow. She greeted me in the yard, lavender clippers in hand, eyes like steel. "Your brother found the old trouble, didn't he?" She murmured, as if I'd already explained everything. "It runs in families, Sam. Halston's been fighting the woods a long time." I told her about the pit, the jacket, the keys, the static on my phone. She nodded. Ground remembers all that's lost, especially those who walk out wanting to disappear. Some find what they're chasing. Some become part of the chase. I left with more questions than I'd carried in. Maybe answers were buried with the missing. Reverend Mills, frail but focused, watched me from his porch rocker. "Sam, God keeps ledger of the lost, but some places aren't his work. That pit, those woods, they swallow pain and memory. If you walk in, walk with faith, not just fear." I thanked him. Walked out with even less idea what to do next. That evening, I sat on my porch, the jacket in my lap, keys cold in my hand. Duke curled at my feet, growling low at shadows beyond the fence. Night washed in, and with it came a new resolve. If Mike was waiting, somewhere between memory and the dark, I'd follow as long as the woods let me. The following day brought heat and heavy air, thunder rumbling far distant. Maybe the world sensed the shift something in me had changed as well. I set out before breakfast, leaving Duke behind after a restless night. If there was danger, he'd sensed it already. The pit on McBride's Ridge was drier now, a halo of dusty prints marking where Duke and I had been. I eyed the tree line for movement, half hoping to see Mike stride out and call me an idiot for worrying. But everything was still and old, as if the ground itself was tired of waiting. I walked slow, retracing Mike's likely steps. The boot print in memory, the jacket's resting place. My mind spun through every story Dad told, every warning and joke. The woods felt different from childhood. The magic was gone, replaced by a gnawing unease that grew with each echo of birds absent and leaves whispering in patterns that never quite matched the wind. As the sun climbed, I reached the far side of the ridge where the trees thinned. Here, the land dipped into a forgotten marsh, stagnant water black as oil and humming with fat mosquitoes. I kicked at a rotten stump, cursed, and kept moving, drawn by some unspoken promise. I heard voices, not just in my head, echoing faint as if blown in from another world. I froze, heart beating wild. Years of habit made me crouch behind a fallen log, listening hard as the air buzzed with words I couldn't make out. I called out my own name first, then Mike's. Silence answered, deep and accusatory. I pressed on, boots sinking into soft earth. In a clearing ringed by ancient oaks, I found a circle of stones, half buried by moss and time. No lurker, no memory, just a suggestion of ritual. Goosebumps raced up my arms. Old folks talked about the calling place, but never by daylight. A sudden gust swept through, carrying scraps of paper pages from a journal, torn and muddied. I gathered what I could, smoothing the largest sheet against my knee. Mike's handwriting leapt out. If something's watching, don't answer. If you're alone, don't listen. Stay out of the water. The rest was smeared, unreadable. I pocketed the scraps, more determined than afraid. Mike had left a trail, maybe for me, maybe for anyone desperate enough to look. A whisper rode the breeze. I followed, unsure if I moved from bravery or stubbornness, until the oaks thickened, and I found another clue, a rusted flashlight, heavy with muck, initials carved into the side, M.H. Now there was no denying whose story I'd stepped into. I retraced paths as best I could, feeling the woods tighten with every hour spent searching. Hunger gnawed, real, physical. I checked my phone. Noon had come and gone. Back at the pit, I stopped, turned in a slow circle, searching for anything I'd missed. My head spun, ears ringing as if from altitude or fever. I dropped to my knees, clutching the journal pages, and cried out not Mike's name, not my own, but every lost soul who'd vanished into these woods with nothing left behind but rumors. When I stood again, the sun was low, the breeze cool. I felt older than my 55 years, but something new burned a certainty that I wasn't just chasing the missing. I was chasing the truth, whatever shape it took. With Mike's last words echoing through my mind, I made a promise to the empty air. I'd last longer than the fear, and I'd bring my brother home, or I'd join him, so the world would remember us both. Days blurred into each other, marked only by my increasingly frantic search, and the buzz of neighbors drifting away, their concern replaced by uneasy glances. The world outside kept spinning, laundry dried, church bells rang, trucks passed while mine narrowed to the marsh and woods and the haunted edge of sleep. Lou kept calling, with news or comfort, or her brisk, relentless hope. She told me stories, old legends I'd forgotten, some about lost children who returned as adults, changed and silent as shadows. Some come back, Sam, she'd insist, but you might not want what returns. I spent one evening by the pit, losing time, watching stars flicker through the canopy. That was when Officer Braddock parked alongside me, headlights splintering the night. He got out slow, hands tucked in pockets. "Anything new?" he asked, but didn't wait for an answer. I shook my head, voice rough. "You ever see their faces in dreams?" I asked him. "The missing?" He hesitated. "Every damn night." We sat in silence, the kind only men with too much loss between them can share. Finally, Braddock handed me a folded note. "Your brother called 911 from out here 3 days ago. Static mostly. Dispatch says," he whispered, "the old place. Means anything to you?" It did. The old place was the ruins of a pre-war farmhouse, 20 minutes east of the Grove. Our father once warned us not to trespass there, said it was bad ground, but never explained. After Braddock left, I dug in an old kitchen drawer for a battered flashlight and a knife. I wrote Lou a quick note. Going out. "If I don't return, tell the dogs to look for me by the old place." Slipped it under her door before setting out. The house was a shell, shrouded in weeds and warped boards. My flashlight caught on broken glass, a pair of rotting boots, graffiti on the stripped walls. Something inside me recoiled, but I pressed forward, boots crunching soft earth. In the living room, nothing but shadows and dust. I found a scatter of recent footprints. My pulse quickened. I crept through each room, searching for signs. Mike's handwriting on a doorframe, "Sam and Mike 1986. A mark of our boyhood, nearly lost under layers of new scratches, gouged deep into the wood." A whisper drifted, low and strange. I followed it through cracked hallways, past rooms filled with molding furniture and the remains of someone's failed escape. The wind shrieked through a broken window, rattling the glass, lifting dust into twisting curtains that looked like shapes on the edge of becoming real. I nearly ran then, heart pounding. But I kept moving, driven by the promise I'd made to myself and to Mike. If he was waiting, somewhere between worlds, I'd have to push past the horror to find him. In what had once been a bedroom, I leaned down and found a piece of folded paper, part of Mike's journal, torn and smudged. Lost in the woods, but not alone. Something old here, watching. I think it wants stories, needs memories. Don't let it have them all. That last line felt like both warning and invitation. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered and died. The dark rolled in, a weight pressing on my chest. Something scuffled in the corner, too quick for me to see. I gripped the knife, called Mike's name. The wind died. Silence heavier than doubt filled the room, and for a moment, I swore that something stood just beyond the wrecked doorway. Tall, silent, shape uncertain, watching me. I remembered Dad's words. Halston's vanished 2 ways. This was the moment. Stay or run. I chose to stand. The form in the doorway shimmered, resolved into a thin figure face hidden, but the hands unmistakable. Mike's battered watch glinted at the wrist. I whispered, "Mike?" The figure took a slow step forward, and in a voice worn thin but familiar, said, "Don't look back, Sam. Just listen." The rest was lost in static, the howl of 1,000 voices swirling around us. I held my breath. The darkness sagged around me, thick as tar, the only light a trembling sliver bleeding in from the ruined window. The figure in the doorway stayed for a heartbeat, for an age, until my mind reeled, forced to choose what was real and what belonged to fear. "Mike," I croaked, every memory of him tumbling over itself for proof he was real my brother, not some shadow. The thing he'd said pulsed through my mind. Don't look back. So I stared straight ahead as he stepped closer. Not fully solid, more suggestion than flesh, but familiar just the same. The tilt of his head, the way his hands curled, the quiet weight of someone who'd lived long with regret. "Sam," he whispered, and my name nearly broke me. He gestured toward the journal page clutched in my hand. "Listen." The house trembled, foundation groaning below my feet. All around, whispers bled through the walls, hundreds of voices, some gentle, some frantic, weaving a chorus both ancient and new. "They want stories," he said, voice choked between this world and wherever he'd gone. "They need memories to stay alive. That's why the lost come here. They get used up, made into part of the place. You're not like me, Sam. You can walk away. But you," my voice faltered, "why can't you leave?" His face flickered, caught between grief and forgiveness. I gave too much of myself. Too many secrets, too many nights staring into this darkness, wishing someone else would pull me back. I don't blame you for what you couldn't fix. Just don't give them everything. Keep something for yourself. I felt my own memories unspooling childhood days, the weight of family pain, the promise I'd made to Mike as boys, to never let each other go missing for long. The chorus swelled, pressing at my skull. I felt stories tugging at me, all those years, all those fears urging me to give in. But I clung to my brother's voice, to the shape of his hand, to the rough weight of the keys still in my pocket. He reached for me cold, but not cruel. "Tell them about home, Sam," he begged. "Tell them so we're not just lost, not just gone." So I did. I closed my eyes and began. Every scrap of old laughter, first fights, summer rains, the way Mom whistled in the kitchen, and Dad cheered for us at ball games, the scent of wild mint by the creek. In the telling, something in the house softened. The darkness thinned. The shivering thing in the corner receded a little. "That's enough," Mike said, when my voice cracked at last. "Take the rest and run." I opened my eyes. The house was empty, no more voices, only the wind and sunlight spilling gold over the dust. The watch lay in the middle of the bare floor, hands frozen at midnight. I pocketed it. "I love you, brother," I whispered. The air shifted, as if something had heard and been satisfied for the moment. I staggered out into the pale day and away from the old place, not looking back until Dunham's Grove was nothing but a rim of green on the horizon. My phone buzzed, a flood of unread messages, the world demanding I rejoin it. But before I drove home, I stopped by that pit one last time. I tossed in the journal pages, the keys, even the battered knife relics of the story the woods had tried to claim. "You can't have us both," I said, not quite sure who I was talking to. "We're more than the missing." And for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe that was true. I went home with hollow steps, each one heavier and lighter at once. The house waited cool and silent. I washed the grime from my hands' wounds stinging, bones aching in a way that felt both old and brand new. I set the watch on the table, its hands still fixed forever at midnight, and poured a cup of coffee, listening to the world return through the morning window. Lou called, voice softer than usual. "Was it you who left the note and the porch light burning half the night?" "It was," I said, "and I think I saw him, Lou, or something of him. Told stories like he asked. It's quiet now. Feels finished." I paused, the words catching. "He's not coming back, but I think he's found. Rest." She didn't press, didn't demand proof or explanation. "Some folks are only ever meant to be found in memories, Sam." The days that followed settled gently. The whole town, so ready to move on, let their eyes linger a little longer when I passed, never sure what to say, only that something old had shifted. The woods stood where they always had, but the air around Dunham's grove felt different, lighter, rid of a hunger that had gone unanswered for too long. I saw Sarah at the store. She touched my shoulder, squeezed once. "If you need help, ask." For anything. Earl came by later, left eggs on the porch, nodded from the driveway. I let their small kindnesses in, piece by piece, until the house wasn't quite so empty. Nights returned, still sometimes restless, shadows gathering behind the glass. But the voices faded, replaced by dreams of summer fields, Mike racing me toward the creek, laughter echoing through the trees, light painting our faces golden. In the morning, Duke would stretch at my feet, and I'd let myself believe for those quiet minutes that everyone I loved was still close. I went back to the pit one dawn, not to linger, only to see. The circle of stones in the marsh had grown mossy, old secrets sinking beneath new growth. Sunlight broke through thin cloud, tracing gold on the tangled ground. A hush held the air, not heavy, but sacred. I stood a while, whispering every story I could remember, then turned for home. As the weeks ticked past, I made peace with change. I kept Mike's watch, cleaned the glass, wound it tight each morning, let midnight sit stubborn where time once moved on. The town healed around me, life stretching forward, birthdays, church picnics, lost dogs found at the corner store. Folks still talked about people who went missing, but now they spoke softer, as though every loss deserved more than a ghost story. I kept searching, in my way, not for Mike, not anymore, but for the pieces of myself I'd left behind in the woods. The stories and heartaches, the love and longing that tether a man to his family, his home, his own unfinished ending. I found most of them, some days better than others. And sometimes, just before sleep, when the world was quietest, I'd hear laughter from the far side of memory, a boy's voice, a brother's voice, not lost, not really, just waiting always for the next story to be told. Years have passed since those haunted weeks at Dunham's Grove. Time, in its way, has weathered every sharp edge of memory, leaving only what truly matters. Neighbors stopped asking about Mike after a while, and the woods began swallowing up new secrets, quieter ones, a lost scarf, a broken swing, a ring of boot prints melting into mud. I'm 60 now, slower on the draw, but still walk the old paths some evenings, Duke trailing, ears perked, familiar sounds. Sunsets are kind in this part of the world, dipping below cottonwoods, painting gold across fields that remember more than I ever will. Lou passed last winter. She left me her old percolator and a box of clipping stories and laughter, recipes scrawled in the margin, phone numbers long out of service. I keep it all tucked away for days when the silence is too deep and the wind rattles a bit too cold. Sometimes I find young folks poking around the grove, daring one another past dusk, just like we did. I warn them, gentle but firm, tell your stories out loud. Remember where you came from. And if you hear a voice you love calling after dark, think twice before following. They laugh or roll their eyes, not understanding the weight behind old warnings. I still dream of Mike. Sometimes he's young and wild, sometimes weary and wise. Always he carries something of me, of the Halstons refusing to be erased by woods or sorrow. I wake grateful every time. The pit, the circle of stones, the haunting ache of loss, all have faded into the ordinary hush of living. But on certain evenings, when the air is right and the crickets settle, I sit by my porch and close my eyes. I listen, and in that deep, forgiving quiet, I hear a voice from the far edge of memory calling me home, calling all the missing back, if only for a little while. Nothing in this world is truly lost, not as long as there's someone to remember, someone to keep the story going. And so I do.